Hello everybody, and welcome back. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster, and I am one of the lead developers behind Silmarillion Total War. Today, we're playing around on our test build. I'm going to be showing off a legendary company in a little bit, and we'll be talking a little bit about their kind of concept and such and such. But I'm also making a new competitive map for us to play on. This map is going to be based off of the Sons of Feanor stronghold of the Pass of Aglon. And they've got a couple of Aglon-themed units. And we're going to be playing with some of the new Elven assets that myself and WK, who many of you will know from Third Age Reforged, have added into the game just today. So we've got like 20 or so new Elven buildings in addition to the ones that we had, so more than enough to fill out the space in here. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of our legendary lords. We're just going to take it pretty easy today. I think a lot of our testers... We've played a few games today already, and I think everyone's just kind of taking a little bit of a break. So in the meantime, I'm going to try and make my cliffside here look a little bit more realistic, I guess. Turn up the power of that tool just a tad. And I'm almost positive that this time around y'all can hear my music, although for whatever reason, can never hear it on the playbacks. So I just assume that nobody can. I think that's just a fun part of the experience of watching somebody do something like this. It's just very relaxing, I find. Very cathartic. So we want to have an entrance here, because don't want to totally block these guys in. I also want to make it look kind of realistic, but we'd also don't want to take up a lot of playable space just adding extraneous hills, because that doesn't look very good. We'll have an entrance here, and we're going to put more cliff kind of out this way, as this is intended to be like a mountain pass kind of thing. And I've seen a little bit of artwork that I looked up before I started with this. And I'm kind of very loosely basing it off of that, and like just going with my gut about what I think will be fun and what I think will be like reasonably balanced. Now, obviously, we're gonna want to like add some like mountain ranges and stuff over here, because what I actually just watched Prometheus the other day, but the quote from the movie is "God doesn't build in straight lines," and we're definitely building in a straight line, so it looks a little bit artificial. And we'll find a way to remedy that, but I want to keep this nice and open, because I want like this is at like the back of the deployment map, but it's going to give you the ability to just completely circumvent this area, and I think it's wide enough here that you can actually have like decent kind of like fights about who's going to control this like not the central passage, but this main passage here. And then obviously there's that choke point there in the center, which I'm going to try and like build it in like that a little bit. And over here, outside of the map, we're going to go ahead. Make sure we keep saving. Let me just double check on our chat here, just so I can keep up with what everyone is doing. Oh. Hello. It is a lot of fun. I love making maps. And these are assets that aren't going to be like, it's not like we just keep them to ourselves. These are going to be available to everybody. Because I'm working in tandem with the Reforged team, if you guys play both Silmarillion and Reforged, you're going to have access to these Elven assets no matter where you are, which is just a great thing, I think. Try and like spread this out a little bit. Yeah, see, that looks a little bit more natural. And this isn't going to be like part of the map, but it does add a lot of flavor. And if you're interested in the whole map making process, like I find that it kind of, I don't want to say it takes away from the experience. Obviously it doesn't, because this is outside of the map. However, when you build, you put all this care and attention to building everything on the map, and then suddenly it just stops where the red line ends. Well, it looks weird, and I think you're doing yourself a disservice by not paying attention to the littler details like that. So yeah, build outside of the maps, make it immersive. That'll do. Let's turn up the tool. I'll turn up the strength of that just slightly. I'll just kind of follow like the lines here that we've like drawn for ourselves, and then we'll have like peaks and stuff. we want this to be like high enough that it kind of seems like a mountain range. It doesn't seem like something you just be able to go around or go over very easily. I think that's good enough. Over here it probably needs, this area here probably needs a little bit of raising up. I think that looks good. And we'll leave this lower because it like kind of like gets lower the farther this way it comes. And we'll like run it circular like this. And that looks decent, I think. And we'll change the texture on that so it's not just one big green mass. And then here, just gonna kind of like run our brush in like a bit of a circle here and just do like irregular sort of patterns, and it gives you that like mountainous kind of look there. On this, we'll just raise it up. And make sure you save all the time, because things will crash. It is an old game, and it loves to crash on you, and it really sucks if you like do all of this work. We're gonna make it kind of like come out like this a little bit, so it's like break up the like silhouette of it like being a straight line. There we go. And there's like another like mini kind of pass here. Here we'll go a bit higher. I think that looks good. But yeah, as I was saying, it really sucks when you lose like hours worth of work and you like meticulously placed a whole bunch of things, and then boom, it crashes on you and you realize that you didn't save, and it just makes you really angry and kind of kills your soul a little bit. So I want that to not happen to you, as it has happened to me many, many times, more times than I care to admit. It sucks. Random question: ever thought of making a map specifically for Darwinian? Yes, I have, and I wanted Elven assets to do that. And that was still when I was still working on Reforged, and I wanted Elven assets to do that, and I never got them because I was too lazy and nobody else really felt like doing it because we had other fish to fry, and then I never did it. But now I can, or at least I can put the idea that I had for Darwinian kind of into practice here. There we go. Raise it up here just a little bit. Oops. Let's lower the brush there. Give it a nice little peek. Yeah, I love it. We'll smooth it out a little bit too, because I don't like when the peaks are like so jagged. So we'll take our little smooth tool here. That's probably not big enough. We'll turn it down. You can like kind of see, you just like run it over just like lightly, and it like gets rid of some of the sharper edges, because the sharper edges like it looks gamey. I think it looks like you used a tool to make that elevation, and I don't think it looks natural or nice or anything like that. So yeah. You may think that this is a lot of care and attention to put onto something that is outside of the map, that you won't play with, and that most people won't even notice. And you are entirely correct. But this is just how I do it. I notice, and it bothers me. There we go, that's a little bit better. Look a bit more like time worn, because like you don't, maybe I just haven't like been to a lot of mountain ranges, but a lot of them seem like quite worn down and like smooth with like time and like wind erosion and stuff. So you probably don't get a whole lot of like super sharp peaks like this occurring like really naturally. It's more of like a blunted tip, I suppose. I'm just gonna very lightly run this over these areas. This is too much attention to detail. WK say what now? I feel like WK would totally understand that. That man's time is valuable. Oh no, we got crashed. Okay. It'll take me a second to get it back online, so you're gonna have to deal with the black screen for a second. It just be that way. There we go. But luckily, we save all the time. So it just takes us 2 seconds to pick up where we were. And the crashes just become a cost of doing business, really. Oh no, I hope I didn't put this on the wrong side. I might have. That sounds like something that I would definitely do. That's kind of funny though. Like one team like moves like this. No, that can't be right because that doesn't divide the map equally. Unless it does. Oh, I'm pretty sure I did this correctly. That's fine. Wouldn't take us very long to do this all again if we had to. But at least now I get a sense for like how I want it to look. I don't mind. I don't mind redoing it or just having it be like weird and quirky. Jervis, I am currently making a passive Aglon, but I might have committed a terrible error and not built it the way that I was supposed to. That's okay. You know, I don't mind starting again. We're gonna start again. We can kind of like do it from the ground up. And you guys can like see like the thought process, I guess. Yeah, we totally screwed that up. That would have been hideous. Like it would have been like one like deployment would have been like trapped over here. That would have been awful. Okay, so what we're gonna do. This is more or less center, because someone has already done like the. That's not exactly equidistant between those two or those three blobs at the other end here. So we'll move it slightly to the left, but still. I'm gonna go to ambient misc. We're gonna find. Yeah, look at all this stuff. Look at all that Elven stuff. There's more down here, too. Alright, there they are. Elven towers and all that cool stuff. My gatehouse. I'm going to put it slightly over here. And if it looks weird to you, that's because you're not crazy. This thing currently is a little bit weird because I can't quite find the right texture for it. So I found... Oh no, I goofed. I put it in the wrong direction. So I found a texture that more or less kind of does what it's supposed to do. I like this. Let's do that. It's also kind of missing pieces, which is a bit weird. Hopefully no one holds that against me. It's okay if you do. I don't understand. Okay, so I'll put that back down. Move forward slightly. That should be... it's not quite in the middle of the map, but it will... It's close enough to this side that like they'll be able to like deploy kind of inside of it, which is good. But yeah, I don't know if I finished that thought, but basically this is not how it's supposed to look. It's supposed to have like proper textures that fit the model better, but this like it looks okay. And I'll have to get the actual textures off of WK tomorrow and then like fix it. But for now, we're gonna take our landscape height. We're gonna give ourselves, because this thing is so large, these areas over here didn't actually like fit when I was like making it in IWTE and like putting down like the little pathfinding stuff, like painting down the pathfinding. Didn't work. So what we'll do is we'll make it look kind of cool, but like this will be like impassable. Like you won't be able to go up there, but it'll still like look like there's like a tower or something on top. So it's not totally crazy, and it like kind of fixes the flub that we made in a way that I think at least makes a little bit of sense. Yeah, see, that still looks good, and it like covers up like the bit over here that you're not supposed to see, and yeah. I'll have to fix that at some point, but like I just want it because it gives you like the general like gist of kind of what I'm going for. Okay, and so we won't make this too big. We're gonna go all the way down there, and we're gonna save passive Aglon. We'll overwrite the other one that we did. Oh good, we still have water. Well, that's nice. We'll just smooth all that out right here. And then it'll like make it open and like able to be used, and it'll like bring closer to the ground, because I'm not really good at like leveling things completely flat afterwards when I've already like screwed with them like this. So I'm gonna crank that up to 1 billion, and then I suppose it'll be good enough. It'll be like kind of like raised up, good enough, and there's like a slight hill in there. Cool, cool, cool. And we'll do kind of like what we did before, but we'll like not do it in a straight line this time. We'll do it in kind of like an S, and then we can make it look a little bit more. Yeah. And we'll like make the S like very like big and like prominent, and then we'll make like the areas in between the S, these little like pillars here, like the big peaks kind of the mountain range this is a part of. Ignore the ocean in the back. You won't be able to see that in the game. You will not. Yeah, perfect. Oops, I goofed there. Let's save. I'll make this a little bit bigger because it's looking kind of weird when it's small like that. Meow, 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 meow. There we go. That's kind of cool. So at the end of the day, I do want this map to be like pretty competitive. Obviously, there'll be like a bit of an advantage to this side, but I want there to be like interesting like plays that you can make. So I don't want them just to be able to sit in here for frickin' ever. So I think what we'll do, what we didn't do last time, is we'll add like a pass. Like we'll go like around like here, and we'll open it, and we'll go a little bit farther there, and we'll open it, and we'll just make sure that there's lots of like space here, so that people can deploy armies. So like somebody next to them isn't gonna necessarily be like half and half here, like mostly on like a giant hill that they can't really do anything with. That's probably the best way to do it. Potentially we could also open up, not be like so dramatic about it. We could open up a second gateway, like put a second gatehouse in, but I don't think I want to do that. There we go. We'll just kind of like get the outline here. And then we'll leave it open kind of like right here. And then farther, like right on the red line, we'll like leave it open again. I think that's probably a good way to do it, so that like whoever starts in here obviously has like a cool little like base that they can fall back on. But it's like not an overwhelming advantage, essentially. Which is kind of what I think is important on a competitive map. It's okay to have maps that are a little bit advantageous, I think, but not ones that are just game-breakingly in favor of one side or the other. There we go. I'll like do have like a big imposing like tower in here, really make it feel like a mountain range. Yes. Yes. Perfect. Yeah, I'm glad we restarted. Honestly, if I didn't restart, I would just be being like unabashedly lazy, and that's just not alright. Put effort into it or don't bother. Oh shit, this is way too strong. I just flatten my peaks. There we go. Hey Alex, how's it going, buddy? Make like a fort. That's kind of what we're doing. So like the Pass of Aglon is like a stronghold of the Sons of Feanor, and they'll have like a whole area in here that we'll like be able to make into like an elven fort. We're just kind of like putting down the groundwork here, and we're gonna increase the height of all of this, so it's gonna be like a proper mountain range, and then we're gonna add some like mountains and stuff that kind of like go off here that like kind of blend into the mountains that we've already got in the background. So it will like look decent. Right now it's just super rough. Like we're still just like getting the outline of things. And we're probably going to crash a few more times throughout this. Like it's almost inevitable that you will crash using the battle editor, which is why you see me saving like every like 2 seconds. We'll have some peaks here. We'll make this all part of like, yeah, it's like a little like valley in here, and it's like all like hidden and still kind of green, but a little bit less flat. Ooh. And like this, or a little bit more flat than the stuff around it, which is much more jagged. And up here we'll have this. We'll have a peak like right there in the center like that, and then this will kind of like bleed down. Be gentle there because we don't want to flatten the peaks too much. So we do still want it to look mountainous. Like this one's actually not even that bad, so we'll just do a quick little tap there just to smooth it a little bit. There we go. And over here it'll just be like a little bit hilly. We can raise this up some more. It still looks a little bit weird to me. Maybe another like peak here, and we can like connect it to this one. Might help it look a little bit more mountainous and a little bit less. Like, I don't know, like someone, it looks like boiled plastic almost. Like someone's been like poking stuff through. That's kind of what it looks like to me right now. Like some of the parts like individually look good, but like together they look a little bit strange. That's a bit better though. And like this is kind of how you're gonna see it. Certainly off to a good start when you describe your own map as looking like boiled plastic. Oh, that's the plateau tool. Don't want that. Have another little like pass that goes through here, I guess. That's kind of neat. We'll like make it like snake off into the distance. Go ahead and save. I guess I should link my stream in a few different places so I can get some other, draw some other people in here. I'll just be a second there. I think that looks kind of okay. And we'll need to add like rock texture and stuff later, so it's not just like jungle hills, but it's looking okay to me. I like it better than what it was before too, and it's a lot less noticeable. Like you're gonna be playing like at this level, so you're not gonna see a lot of this stuff either. So you're not gonna see like the background here. So we don't necessarily have to finish that. I'll raise that up a bit more. I'll raise these two. Smooth this out so it's a little bit more reasonable, I suppose. Make this look a little bit more natural, not quite, doesn't like jump up quite so suddenly, I suppose. And there you go, we just spent 30 minutes working on stuff that you're not even going to see or interact with. Okay, let's get back to the main part of the map. We can add those details in later. Gotta prioritize. Yeah, here we go. And we'll have it like, turn this down a bit. I'll angle this such that like you still get that tower kind of coming out of the hill. So it's like it's almost like a beacon, right? You could go up there and you like light a beacon or something. Let people know that you're in some sort of distress. There we go. This will kind of bring that together a little bit more. And then like varying degrees of like elevation here the farther you get away. And then we can smooth this all together and make it look a little bit less janky, I suppose. There we go. Make our hills look a little bit more meaty. Nobody likes thin. Nobody likes like thin, kind of beta-looking hills, I guess. We need those big Chad hills, not these pathetic little virgin hills. That's right. There we go. Come down a bit like that. There we go. So it's the thing I try to keep in mind when I'm doing this is that I don't want people to be able to walk up these hills. So like you don't want to smooth it like too much. Like you do want it to be a bit jagged, and also like it just looks better. Over here though, we want people to come through these hills. Let's take a look at that. It's alright. We could maybe lower it just a little bit over here. With these gaps, I try to make them at least like 2 or 3 units across at the very least. I find usually makes like the best kind of result, and you've got like a little bit of room to maneuver. Although that one can just be a little bit tighter, and then this one can be like, but it's farther away. So like going this way, it's gonna take you longer to get there, but like the rewards will be a little bit greater. It's like to cover this, it'll take like, well, unless they're really fast like cav, it'll take a little bit of extra time. And sometimes just Trying to keep your elevations a little bit smoother, so like instead of just like reefing down on the button, you just like kind of stroke it, I guess. Gives you a little bit more like even spread to whatever tool you're using. How's that look? That's okay. I think this needs to be a bit higher though, a little bit meatier looking. Yes. Yeah, there we go. Raise up another. Make it like kind of even harder to get here. I like that. Take a little bit of extra time to get here, so there's like more of a choice about going through this gap that's more easily blocked off, and this one that, you know, you're gonna have to kind of fight a bit more to get into. And what we could even do if we like flatten this out a little bit, so you could put like a little like watchtower up there, like a little elven watchtower. That'll look kind of neat. I'm gonna go ahead and place that right now. See how that's gonna look. Oh, it crashed. Hooray. Oh, give me a second here. Take me a second to get back online. You'll just have to deal with the black screen. It won't take me very long. I'm already at the loading screen. A full stack of a Daneman helping to defend the pass. I mean, it could be fun. Yeah, that's right. We like our hills thick. Extra thick. Like 3 or 4 Cs. Do you remember your jail map? I mean, I remember you wanting to make a jail map. I don't recall it having been made. I could be wrong about that, though. Yeah, Toll definitely needs a little bit of attention, and they've gotten some over the last little while. Like our test build. The thing about Toll is that they just all, because we don't have someone to do animations and skeleton and stuff for Sauron. I'm trying to find somebody, but for the time being, we don't have one. So it always feels like they're missing something, just like perpetually missing something. So I have a couple other changes coming down the pipe for them. It's going to give them access to some more like fire weapons and stuff. So like morale breaking can become more of a factor for Toll, since their units are obviously not as good as Angband's, and not nearly as good as many of the Elven factions in addition to. So, Archimedes, are you under there? Oh, 1 sec. I think my cat wants out. Give me a moment. He'll be back in 30 seconds. Grass is never greener. But yeah, so it feels like they're missing things. So I'm gonna give them access to more like flame weaponry, like make maybe morale breaking a little bit a bigger part of Toll, which I think would be fun. I could see that being frustrating if I went like super overboard on it, and people would be like, "Wow, my stuff all routed in like 10 seconds. What is wrong with you?" And I would reply, "So many things. How much time do you have?" But yeah, so long story short, still a work in progress for Toll. I think that they're so close. I feel like they're so close to being like, they're coming into their own and like being this faction that kind of like stands on its own 2 legs and isn't just like really strong in like a team fight, but struggles in like solo matchups and stuff like that, which can make them sometimes a liability, which I don't want that to be the case. I'm like real attached to Toll, because I did I wrote a lot of their like custom lore and their stories, and I just had a lot of fun making the faction. So obviously I want it to be pretty good. I think that looks decent. Okay, now let's try and place our friggin' tower and hope it doesn't crash again. It's working fine earlier. I wonder what the issue is. I don't know why it suddenly decided that it wants to crash. There we go. Little elven tower there. And the thing about these, cool. Yeah, see that, like, this is why I like to place these objects. It does a lot of the work on these things, like, for you, so we don't have to go and individually put every rock texture there. The game's actually going to do it for you, which is really, really helpful. We're going to go ahead and smooth it out a bit here. Make the approach to this. One thing you want to really pay attention to, and I find that like people who are just starting to like make maps, and I certainly did this when I first started making maps, that they don't pay attention to is that when you smooth things and you change elevation, your objects stay in one place. So if I were to go super close to here, we could very, very conceivably make this tower float, and it just doesn't look good. And obviously, if you're spending all the time that you would be making a map like this, you want it to friggin' look good. It better look good. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing? Let's get rid of this. I don't want trees and stuff like that. Not yet. We'll place those individually. This could be a little bit better. Go ahead and we'll save that. But again, you want to just like make sure that you're not making your stuff float. Just keep an eye out, like just pay attention to like important details like that, because it just doesn't look, it just looks terrible. It looks like you don't know what you're doing when half your stuff is floating. And there's not a whole lot to making maps, as you can see. It's just a bunch of like tools and stuff that you just like use in like your own like sense, I guess, of what kind of makes a good map and what's gonna be fun to play on. Oh, no, I didn't like that. I think what I would like, though, is just like a little hill here. We're going to raise that up ever so slightly so people can't, like, skirt over those defenses. I'm going to save. There we go. We'll have just like a little hill here, which is like nice for the defenders. Like if they're pouring fire down here, like they can kind of engage, and there's like room for like tactical kind of gameplay. You can like use the elevations to your advantage, which could also potentially expose you. If you had an archer unit right here and you have archers up there, they're going to be like wide open for it. So there's counterplay there, and we could make that a bit more interesting, I feel, if we. And like kind of logical, I guess, if we like kind of do the same thing on the outside here. So like, yep, it kind of funnels you in a little bit. But we'll also raise it up slightly here. And we'll make this a bit meaty, I guess, on this side. And so this way, nobody has a particular advantage over the other side, as they both have raised areas right across from one another. And so nobody can complain, although I'm sure they will. Tobal going to be slightly better than Eggman after all those buffs when the time comes for Sauron to... Yes, that is something that I think about. And it's entirely possible that when they get Sauron, it'll be too much, and then that will necessitate some kind of shifting things around. I think that's pretty natural. Sometimes like things have to be rebalanced when you like add a big addition like that to a faction that really shakes up the dynamic. But I'm willing to put the legwork in on that when it's time to. And in the meantime, I hope at least will make Toll a little bit more able to kind of stand on their own 2 feet. So that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make if I have to go back and kind of readjust things a little bit later. Like it just, big deal. It happens basically. I'm expecting that to be the case, if I'm being totally honest. All right, now where's that red line? Cool. Now there'll be a area through here. Oh. Okay, let's raise this up a little bit here. Give it a little peek. This way there's kind of like a progression, and it's not just like a sheer like jump. It kind of goes up. And make it a little bit meatier over here. Again, we want those big Chad hills and these skinny little nerd hills. Ain't got no time for that. Oops, that's probably too big. It like looks decent. Like there's lots of ways in and out of there. So if you're like facing this, like yeah, you have to address anybody who's in the center here a little bit differently. But they won't be able to just sit inside either. Like it's not gonna make whoever is inside here like super passive. Like what I expect will happen is you'll get like detachments here to kind of block this off. And then the big fights will happen like over here, and there'll be lots of stuff. We'll add lots of stuff in here to make this kind of interesting. Like we could add like small little townships and stuff. We'll add some hills and some like areas where units can hide, because it's fairly substantial. Like you could fit an entire army in here with like generous spacing and still have room to spare. So that won't be too bad once we get there. Heights. There we go. That's enough, because we're going to take up too much room here otherwise. I think it might be kind of like neat. Do this here and then have this be nice and high. And then we'll like, yeah, it'll be like super choke pointy in here, and like someone who's turning around could potentially like kind of bottle themselves up in here a little bit if that's the kind of the play they want to make, but there's ways around. Like we're going to smooth this out right here right now. And just like get that kind of like established and ready to go. Yes. Let's see what chat's up to. Whoa, that's a lot of stuff. Who's going to be Angban's faction leader? Morgoth, of course. Is Morgoth going to have like a model and you're going to be able to like use him in multiplayer? No. Maybe he gets a model at some point. I can see that as being not unreasonable, especially if like his settlement that he happens to be in is being attacked. But Morgoth will probably be like sort of like Pope Sauron in Third Age. Like he'll be useful for like calling crusades and like all that other stuff. But like he'll be in like a settlement somewhere and he won't be able to move. So like maybe he doesn't even make an appearance. Like we didn't really need Sauron to make an appearance in like Third Age. It's cool when he does. But Morgoth, we're kind of sticking to the story there. Like Morgoth fought once and it was personal duel. That was it. So he won't be like leading his orcs in the battle or anything. What do you think of Misty Mountains possibly during ban? Possibly getting during Bane. Oh, Durin's Bane. I don't know. I don't really work on Reforged anymore. I get a lot of these questions though. Like, well, what do I think of that? I think it can be fun if it's done correctly. And I think that like the way that Reforged trolls work is that they're all like armor piercing and et cetera, et cetera. And that doesn't really leave a lot of room when everyone has that. Like that trait is like ubiquitous and all trolls kind of work the same way. It doesn't necessarily leave a ton of room for making Balrogs different unless you want to make them elephants. And I don't think that they have anybody on the team who does animations anymore, because I know that Beheli is like taking a breather and he might be gone like for good. So that to me means that there's only really one way forward there, and that's to make them like beefier trolls, and then you've just got trolls in a faction that already has a lot of trolls. So I think it's cool if it's done well, but like in order to make like a Balrog actually unique for them, you'd have to do a lot of like restructuring of kind of like the way things are in the mod. And I think that probably right now, I know Kuro is like happy with where it's going, so I don't see that restructuring happening anytime soon. So I'm all for it if it can be done in a unique way and it's not just a copy of something else. And that's not me like knocking like their mod or anything. Like like that they like the way that it works, and I would do things differently, and I think we're kind of okay with that. How's that look? Decent. This looks kind of weird. There we go. Smooth that out a little bit. Yeah, it looks a bit bizarre. And this is probably outside the playable area. It is! So I want to put a tower here too, just for looks, because I think that's kind of neat. Let's do C. I think C crashed us. No, we've done C already. C is just fine. B? Don't do it. That's right, B. Thank you. Thank you for behaving. For behaving. Yeah. There we go. And then they'll add rocks to everything, and now it just looks good. Like, you can kind of see it getting there. It was looking a little squiffy before when we were, like, over here, and it kind of does when you look at it from the air, but, like, you won't see that. It'll be fine. But, like, you can kind of see, like, the direction that this is going. And does that... Tell me that doesn't look fun. All these different choke points in here, and we're going to add, like, little, like, elven, like, buildings and stuff, and it's going to be, like, all inhabited. It's not just going to be, like, a few fences and a gate. It'll look like a proper settlement when we're done with it. We're going to plan it out. We're going to have it make sense, too. Which is one of the fun things I think about making maps and, like, thinking about this stuff is that you, like, are... by necessity, you got to go into the little details. You're not just going to have, like, your market over where, like, your graveyard is or something. Like, that just is weird. Or you're not going to have, like, your market in a place that's, like, kind of central, where it'd make more sense to maybe have an armory, for example. You need this is a fortress after all. You're going to need, like, access to your weapons more than you need access to melons. Let's see what's going on down here in chat. So Gothmod and Angband will be like the Witch King from Mordor in the Third Age. You know, I haven't really given a ton of thoughts to how Gothmog and like those other kinds of things are going to work. Like, it's easier to do like heroes, like man-sized heroes. We can just pop those as officers into units and have them be at least represented. And we can give them like unique bodyguards and stuff. But I feel like Gothmog is a character. Like, Gothmog killed, like, 2 or 3 High Kings of the Noldor. That guy needs his own model. So will he be a custom general? I'm not sure, but I think it would make sense that he would be. I can't wait for spiders from Dol Guldur, since they're adding him. Yes, I assume Dol Guldur will be done at some point. And that it will definitely have spiders, because, like, I think that's what a lot of people expect from Dol Guldur, isn't it? Let's see here. We need the vegetation tool. I need to get rid of some of these damn trees. Treebeard's not going to approve. Well, that's too bad. And instead of just having like a big elven tower there, let's see what other options we have for like putting down some buildings over here that might like might make sense to be here. So we got all the towers and stuff there. Why don't we do a big elven house here? Whoa! What have we done? I like that. A little bit of like extra architecture there, and that's kind of cool. We got a little temple here. It says it's a temple, but it's actually just a pavilion. Oh, no, we don't want to ruin the floor in the other building. We'll check and make sure that that's not floating. It's not so far, but it does look a little bit strange because there's grass coming through the floor, so we might be able to fix that a little bit with the smooth tool. Nope, apparently not. Yeah, it's okay. I don't mind that. We've got like a little like Elven town here, like the beginnings of. We may expand on this, and we may like kind of move it around a little bit, which I think we probably will. But that's like detail work. Like we'll come back to that in a second. Now we need to kind of like figure out what we want the rest of this map to look like. So I want this to be a mountain pass. So what we're gonna do is what we've been doing already. Let's save it there. And so for those of you who are just joining us, and I think there's a few extra people in here. So we're making a map right now, obviously. We're playing with some of the new assets, but I will be showing off in some new additions to our test build, as this is the Silmarillion test build. There we go. There we go. Make that nice and meaty and kind of make sense, and then we'll smooth it out afterwards. We're going to have this like kind of come down and then come over this way. And then this will be like a peak or something here, right? But after I finish this, I'm going to show off some of the new additions. One of them is a new legendary company. For those of you unfamiliar with the concept, it's basically regiments of renown, but implemented in ways that are, at least I think, kind of interesting and necessitate like some choices. So some regiments of renown in Warhammer, straight up upgrade. You're going to want to take those all the time when you can. And in some cases, they're really well implemented as well, and they like open up new builds and like play into existing ones really nicely. So that's kind of the idea behind our legendary companies. And I didn't call them regiments of renown because I didn't want to be too blatant about the fact that I was crimping CA style. But you know, I'm still nonetheless very open about that. It's not an original idea by any means. But we do have one for Tolin Gaurhoth. As I mentioned, they're getting a little bit of love. And their legendary company, I like this. This looks neat. It's just neat. And then like there's a lot of open area out here, so like the initiative is kind of given to the other people. In any case, so the legendary company for them is the Vorbak Gadgetar, which is the blind hunters in Black Speech. Super scary. They're basically an upgraded, well, not upgraded, they are a unique version of the Laugskaraz Zagulkalab. That being the like melee cavalry, kind of like medium melee cavalry, the unshielded variant. These guys are shielded. Unlike the other variant, they are not armor piercing. They get substantial bonuses in the forest. They are much faster. They are far less well armored, however. They drop a whole 3 armor points from 7 to 3 or to 4. They're not armor piercing. They lose some of the like bonus to like size that the Laugskaraz will get, so they go from 70 to 60. But they're super fast. Their charge bonus is way higher. They can hide anywhere. They get bonuses in the woods. They trade off bonuses against other wargs and elephants in exchange for greater bonuses against horses. So they're an excellent calf hunting unit. I'm sure many of the testers out there can attest to this. You play against Assyria and Tolin Gaurhoth, and you can get kited a lot. And especially the horse archers can really be the bane of your existence. The Vorbak Gadgetar can hide. They're way faster than the horse archers. They're the fastest cavalry in the game. So anything that they sink their teeth into is not going to get away, and they are also locked morale. But they will die off very quickly once people notice them and start focusing energy on destroying them. So they're excellent like hit and run units, and they can be super useful in certain matchups, but it's not necessarily a straight upgrade over the Laugskaraz. Maybe you'll want them some of the time, and maybe you'll want them like on certain maps, especially those that have like a lot of forest tile, like the new War-Torn Plains map. Does have a decent amount of forest tile that you can take advantage of early on. So I think the Vorbak Gadgetar will be pretty useful in those kinds of engagements. You know, I'm not actually super unhappy with the way that a lot of these look. I don't even think I need to run my smooth tool over that. I really just think it looks good and consistent with everything else we've done so far. So what we're going to do is pop down another tower. We're going to do a different tower this time, though. We're going to do Tower A. Where is Tower A? Oh, what's this one? Oh, this is one I think that WK did earlier. Raise that up a touch. There we go. We'll also make our brush smaller. It's kind of neat. And we'll make this like fenced in on a few sides. It's a pretty cool map so far. I wouldn't mind playing on this. Of course, I'm biased, so what do I know, really? There we go. We'll raise that up a little bit. We'll smooth it down slightly. There we go. We'll smooth it here so that it's easy to you can get above this little hilly area. And then this is almost entirely flat on an angle, so obviously we want to fix that a bit because it looks weird. It's perfect. Could very well give you my Himling map. Oh, Himring. Yeah, I'm down for that. I could probably use it as a base. I'd probably change some things because obviously we have access to things that you didn't have at the time. But yeah, if you want to send that over to me, that'd be awesome, Alison. Words. But yeah, with all these new assets and all the stuff that we have planned, really, I think, interesting factions and interesting units and the campaign experience that we hope to be able to offer you at some point, I think the Silmarillion will probably stand the test of time pretty well. I think this is the closest that we're going to get to a Silmarillion game for a really, really long time. And obviously, people love Third Age. The Tolkien's Middle-earth lends itself pretty nicely to Total War and certainly gets people's juices flowing. So at the end of this, you'll have map editors. You can make almost anything that you want to make. You can enjoy hopefully a really strong single player experience and still have a multiplayer that you can go back and really enjoy that has a well crafted meta to it. So I'm really excited for this, and I'm really happy with the way that the project has kind of come together so far. It's pretty awesome to me. I'm very happy. Now let's see. What if I was to put down... We're going to save before we do this because we'll fuck it up if we don't. I'm going to do settlements. We're going to do... around here. Elven City, Elven Town. Elven Village is probably the smallest one. Oh, that caused a crash. Lovely. Lovely. Oh, that's Evil Men Village A. Oops. Give me just a second here. I'll get it back up and running. But let me ask you guys, what do you guys think of the mod and what you've seen so far? I mean, I hear a lot from our testers, but I don't hear it nearly as much from people that either aren't playing the mod or aren't playing the mod on our test build and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of people that don't know that the mod exists. Every time I post something somewhere, people are like, "Oh my god, this is a Silmarillion mod and it's not dead. What the hell is this?" What do you guys think of the mod so far? What's something that you're really excited for, that you really want to see? Or hell, even if you have questions about stuff, I'm an open book, really, unless it's very specific circumstances or I don't know the answer. I'll usually tell you something. Yeah, perfect. Look at that. We did it perfectly this time. We're actually facing the right direction. Good. Good. Elven. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a settlement. I wanted a little elven settlement. Is that so much to ask for? Elven village. Oh, Jesus. That's not what we want at all, is it? I just wanted a tiny town. I didn't want a whole friggin'... Jesus. Too much. What if we made this interesting? I don't know which one of these Austenether will crash it. One of them will. That one will. Okay. We'll do the second one next time. Dwarves. One update on the dwarves. That's one of those things I can't give you an update on because I don't know the answer to it so far. Right now, the dwarves and Gondolin are our two remaining factions that we haven't put onto the build or aren't in a state that I can really show you much or talk about them. And the dwarves actually haven't had anything done on them significantly. Like we have like a proposed roster for them, but they're the faction that hasn't got like any development time so far. So they're still pretty far off. I know how I want them to play. I can tell you all about that. And in the event that you haven't heard it before, I'll tell you right now. So one of the things that I didn't much care for when I played dwarves in other mods is that, at least this is my personal opinion, so you take it as it is, but it is kind of informing the design and the thought that goes behind the dwarves in Silmarillion Total War. But I always found them to be kind of one note. Like they all played the same, more or less. They're all slow, they're all heavy armored, they're all mostly infantry factions. Erebor and Reforged just kind of spice that up a little bit with like some decent cavalry options, which is a thing that you can do. But at the end of the day, most of the Erebor roster is slow and really heavily armored, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to do is, at least if that seems to be the inevitable conclusion, and that's what a lot of people I think expect from the dwarves anyway, and that's what they're going to want to see, and that's what they're going to want when they play a dwarven faction. So if that's going to be the place that we end up at, one of the things I want to do is to give the dwarven players more to do, more choices to make, more things to move, more micro. So we're going to use the detachment system really, really heavily when it comes to dwarven second line units. So some of your shock infantry, some of your, actually all of your supporting units will be detachments. And you'll be able to take more detachments, so you'll have like an equivalent number as if you're bringing full units, but you'll be able to like move them around, and it's going to give you the ability to like put pressure in a whole bunch of different places at once, instead of just like focusing an entire unit on one area and then being kind of like lax in others. So you're going to have lots of like options there. We've named it like tactical flexibility is the name of the trait. So they're going to have lots of like things to do on their back line. They'll have like detachments of shock infantry that you can use on flanking maneuvers that aren't necessarily going to expose an entire unit to destruction. You have like things that you can throw at people that are a little bit more expendable, but still potent because they're still like good shock infantry units. They're also going to have a couple of our unique artillery pieces. One of the things I'm looking at is it's essentially a mortar, but it's not a gunpowder weapon, because I think that would be super immersion breaking. It may be like a special engine that fires things in a very specific arc, but it's not going to be like an obviously gunpowdery thing. But that would be like a one-off, like a single unit engine. Like there's going to be one siege weapon in that unit. And that will have its own unique functionality. And then we'll have other artillery pieces for the dwarves that do different things. I may have a legendary company for their artillery line that allows them to do special things as well, or it has like a unique projectile or something. Like it does a certain thing. I'll think about it and I'll get to that. And then they'll also have artillery crews. Like their artillery crews will be unique. They'll have like this special unit that only exists as an artillery crew, but is also pretty good. So if you want to take down a dwarven artillery crew, especially the single siege weapon units like the mortar that I just mentioned, it's not going to be so easy for you. The dwarves will be able to kind of hold on there in that way, and then they'll have like these extra reserve units that they can kind of throw in, and they get to decide when and how they want to do that. So there'll be lots of like missile play, lots of like decisions to make on your back line, whereas you're going to have your heavy infantry, like slow moving kind of meat grinder front line. some other stuff as well. So the Dwarven units, in order to, it's sort of cheeky, I guess, the whole natural sprinter thing, like the meme that's come out of the Jackson movies. What I'm going to do is for all the Dwarven like infantry units, and half as much for their missile units, are going to have the natural sprinter trait, which basically increases their charge distance. So you get this mobility with the dwarves that's contextual. So if somebody comes near you, you can just run at them, and you're going to get that charge movement speed. You're possibly going to be able to catch them. So it's not quite so easy to like get in your face, especially with like missile units and stuff like that, and not get caught, because the dwarves can run at you from a crazy distance, and they can like screen you out and like surprise you in ways that maybe you don't expect with their mobility. So that's kind of where I want to take the dwarves. Yes, there will be more 30 Days Reforged in the future. My priority over the quarantine, I'm back at work, although I had the day off today. But my priority over the quarantine was like getting the patch back on track, because like I was burnt out for a while. That's why there wasn't like a lot of content. There wasn't a lot of progress being made on the mod as well. But then I came back. We had a tournament. Added a bunch of new maps. I added 2 new factions and stuff like that. So getting that done was my priority for a while. And now I just kind of want to like just relax a little bit, which is why I'm doing this. So like I'm making maps. I'm like adding little kind of like minor things to the mod, but I'm not implementing a whole faction. I'm not redesigning a faction from the ground up, like aesthetically, the way that I did with the Philothrim. That I don't have time to do that anymore, and I don't really have the will to do that anymore. So that's kind of where I'm at for now. And so yes, there will be some more Reforged. I have a couple of Reforged replays. One of them is a big map that Jervis sent me. It's like a big battle, and it's like the Battle of Dale, and I want to do like, you know, like cinematic like intros, and I want to do like big lore videos like what I did with the Battle of 5 Armies. That's kind of the direction that I want to take my content generally. I will do the kind of like one-off battles and stuff like that if it's just like for fun, or like there's no like story behind it. Still gonna do those, but like I also want to do like more big kind of like centerpiece productions, like the Battle of 5 Armies thing, where it's like, you know, like 10-15 minutes of like story, and like there's like lots to watch on screen, and it's like entertaining. That's kind of what I want to do. So that's why things have like slowed down. It's not because I'm not working on stuff. It's just because I'm taking more time with them, and I want to just like elevate the quality of the things that I do. Which isn't to say that they're low quality before, but like it's easier when you're not having to like put together big intros and stuff like that. But that's what I want to do. That to me is like creatively is fun, and I think it's way cooler for you guys to watch. Like that's just way more entertaining, and I think that would help like the channel kind of stand out, because there's like a fair amount of community casters, and so I've asked myself like, what do I do that's different from them? And one of the things that I do is that I like to video edit. Whereas, you know, not everybody else likes to do that. It's kind of a pain in the ass, etc., etc. So that's kind of what I want to do. And while I'm talking here, I just had a bit of an idea. I want to, like... Yes. Yes, natural choke points here. So, like, kind of, like, goes into, like, this little pass. And then we'll put some, like, Elven, like, stuff in here. And we're going to smooth that. Oop, it's too big. Too small. Go ahead and save there. But yeah, I haven't given up on Reforged. Although I will say that I'm a bit less interested in it, since I have like Silm in my life, and like it's like a fun outlet for like my passion for game design, essentially. So I like doing that, and I like talking about it, and I like showing off games and like talking about like what we're working on and like why I think it's cool and stuff like that. So how's it going? Love the content generally. Curious about the Silmarillion mod. Is the 3 houses of men one faction or 3 factions? Currently, the houses of men are baked into Noldor factions, and they are, because they were like sort of like supporting them in the story and like integrated into their militaries. So currently, the House of Beorn fights for the House of Feanor. So all of their units are from the House of Beor. The House of Hador will be coming with the Fingolfin faction. They are done. You can actually see them on our mod DB and in our Discord. But they're a little bit more like integrated into kind of like the Elven, like, way of warfare. So like they have a lot more elven looking gear. And the Haladin currently are not represented in any particular sub-faction. It's possible that we could bake them in potentially, I think, to House of Finarfin, but then the House of Finarfin would have to get like a big kind of rework, or like some of their units would have to be made into Edain units, which would necessitate some changes there too. So that would have to be like a lot of rebalancing. What I'm thinking is that because the House of Haleth was so small, and they, as far as I remember, they kind of like fought defensive wars. Like when they fought alongside the elves, it was because someone was trying to invade their woodlands. What I think in that case makes sense, given the story, is to have the House of Haleth as mercenaries on the campaign map. And that's something that I'm actually really looking forward to, is that Silmarillion has rosters that are just generally smaller, I think, than what you're used to. Some factions in, say, Reforged, for example, can have upwards of like 20 to 25 units. And a lot of units have overlap. That's not the case in Silmarillion. Every like piece has a very specific place and a role, and it's not going to fit into every comp, but it is still worthy of being in that faction because it does things that other units can't necessarily do or don't do as well. So those rosters will be supplemented with a shit ton. Oh, can I say that without getting demonetized? A crap ton of mercenaries and stuff on the campaign map that you'll be able to use. You're going to get a lot of like themed units there. Some legendary companies will only be available to certain factions as like very, very, very long turn time recruitment units. Like you'll get one like every like 20, 30 turns kind of thing. Just to keep them like still interesting and unique and important. Stuff like that. So there's going to be a ton of mercenaries. They're going to fill in a lot of gaps in the story that you don't necessarily see in the multiplayer rosters. Because the multiplayer rosters are tailored for, surprise, multiplayer. But we can be way more flexible in campaign. TW stands for Total War. That is correct, because that is what my channel was founded on. And that's what I always find myself coming back to and like wanting to play, basically. But yeah, let's go back to making stuff for this map, because like I'm falling behind here. Oops, I need this. I'll smooth these out a little bit in a second. There we go. And then I think this would be a good place to put another one of them elven towers, because then it's kind of like a pass within a pass. Like this looks like a fortress, like a place that's defensible, which I quite enjoy. So let's find ourselves an elven tower that we haven't used, and that's going to be large elven tower A. Hopefully it doesn't crash. Fingers crossed. It didn't crash. What do you know? We'll have this pointing the opposite direction. Oops, oops, oops. There we go. And then we'll smooth this out a tad. We'll go down. Looks alright. Smooth this out here so it's not so like sheer. We'll do it on the outside as well, so there's a bit more of a curve. How heckin' cool is that? So we got this little tower area here that's got a big wide open choke point. A lot of the stuff that you can like run over and like overrun, so it's not like as choke pointy as say here, for example, where the terrain is impassable. And then over here you've got not one but two little entrances, and this one is wider than the other. It'll take you more time to get to, and it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more danger, I guess, because you can have this hill here, so like people can set up here and they can make your life pretty difficult. But here it's easier to be bottled up. So I think there's some interesting choices. And then over on this area here, there's two little hills, one on either side. so that missile units can kind of like vie and jockey for position and like try and shoot each other off the hill, and yeah, just looks cool. I think it's reasonably balanced. So now we need to do a little bit of like details and stuff. So we're gonna do like a mix here of like Manish and Elven buildings. So down here we're gonna have a little Elven barracks. I think would look good. I happen to have just the model. If you're a fan of Battlefield Middle-earth, you'll probably recognize this right away, although I should have done some other things with this. Maybe put this down first. That's okay. Do the barracks there. What if I put a statue here? Does that screw things up? No, it doesn't. What do you know? We're going to put a little elven statue by this door. Because that looks cool. And because I can. Go ahead and we'll save that. And put statue D more or less in the same place. Nah. Doesn't look as good. Just have the one statue there. Wow! What's happening? What's happening? Stop, 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 stop. That's weird. We're going to load after we save, and hopefully that will go away. Battle editor is old and quirky, so shit like that happens. Ambient mist. Let's do... I think that there's like a camp in here, like a generic camp that would look decent. We did a field fortification right over here. That might be kind of neat. Do one of those stake fortifications. Where is it? It's like a stake fortification somewhere in here. And there it is. Oof. I'll raise the elevation slightly. There you go. That's kind of neat. Makes it look a little bit more fortified. I'm going to smooth that out so it's not so jagged. I like it. I'm a big fan. I think we kind of don't need this as much now, so we can... Yeah, there we go. And it's still kind of like towery and like choke pointy. But still wide open, so there's counterplay. You can't just like hide in a walled area and expect people to come and attack you. That's ridiculous. Elven stable. I love it. I want to get rid of this. Put the Elven stable in there. And this, fun fact about this, is that it can actually be garrisoned. So you can go through the gate here, and it's a little bit wider than you think, so it actually extends like into these two pillars here, just to make it like wide and like reasonable. And you can get in easily from the back. So if you want to like put a unit in here, and like archers and stuff, like you can actually garrison this, and you can use the walls there that make sense that you could be able to use. You can actually like play with those, which I think is kind of neat. And with that in mind, maybe we'll make this a bit more sheer. So this is easy to be overrun. You can get up this way, but this area here, you have to work for it a bit. I like that. I want to smooth it out a little. I guess that's not so sheer. But yeah, I like that. See what chat's up to. 12 Houses of Gondolin. You bet your ass they will. We are making a unit for every single one of the houses, with the exception of the Mole, who will be mercenaries for Angband. For obvious reasons, because the House of the Mole were traitors, and the one time the Gondolin went to war, or it was like in genuine danger, they turned traitor, and they attacked their own people. I will get to you in just a second there, Anno. Let me just finish answering Kenneth's question. Yes, every single unit will represent a house, and every single one of the houses will have their own way of fighting, so their own weapons, their own strengths, their own weaknesses. And currently, and this is subject to change, but currently, the idea that I have for Gondolin is that they will be like very, very well trained, very, very elite, but their big problem will be lacking like mid tiers. So they will have some mid tier houses. The Tree is one of them. Harp is another. And those are like basic units. That's like sword and slingers, basically. But all of their hyper specialized units will be good at what they do, but they'll be at their best when you combine them with other people. And like figuring what mix of houses is going to be right for the situation and for like what you want to, like, what your strategy is, what your team composition is I think going to be a big part of building a Gondolin army. Is that you're going to have to like, you won't have generalists, you'll have a lot of specialists, and there'll be like strengths and weaknesses to using each one of those. And maybe they're all not going to be like, you know, good in every situation. But at least as insofar as Tolkien described them to us, every house will kind of follow like his direction there, I guess. So like the House of the Tree will have, so they had like clubs, so I'm going to give them shillelaghs, and they'll be slingers. House of the Heavenly Arch are going to be archers. That's another one I'm making. The House of the Golden Flower, I kind of took the reins on that one a little bit and decided I would do something a bit differently with them. They'll have 2 units. One of them will be a bodyguard, like a very small bodyguard of like 2-handed units, and they'll be relentless, I guess is how people understand that, but it'll be unstunnable essentially in combat. And they'll have 3 HP, and they'll be, I think, the only heavily armored 3 HP unit in the game, but they will also be very, very small and quite expensive as a result. But they'll be super elite, and you'll be able to use them for like tackling monsters and things like that. So like if you're fighting Udu Loki, for example, maybe that's going to be a unit that you want to like throw into the fray and have them fight toe-to-toe with the Udu Loki. I'll probably give them, I don't know, I'll experiment with their mass so they can't just be easily knocked over by large entities and stuff like that. But it will also make them like push really hard against infantry. So like if they're just fighting infantry all by themselves, they'll get surrounded, but it won't matter as much because they'll be relentless, but still. And then the other unit of the Golden Flower will be a Lancer unit, which I know there's only one person in Gondolin who rides a horse, but surely they have horsemen. It makes sense that they would have horsemen. Just because it's not explicitly stated doesn't mean they don't have horsemen. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make the Golden Flower horsemen. And then there'll be other stuff. They'll have access to a pike unit. Pikes are quite few and far between because of how powerful they are. But there'll be like 1 of 3 factions that have them, or 4 rather. Fingolfin will have some mid-tier pikes. But yeah, that's Gondolin. So let me answer Anno's question here before I move on to doing some more map making. Just a cool concept art in a minute. Trying to visually depict Edain units, in my opinion, is fairly difficult. Like, what's the historical reference visually? We kind of just went with whatever we thought would be kind of neat, really. So, like, the Edain for the House of Beor, for example, are a little bit more, like, Viking-esque. Like, they've got a lot of, like, Anglo-Saxon and, like, Rohan kind of influence to them. The House of Haleth haven't really been made yet. They'll be, like, mercenaries, probably. What do I got here? I got Smooth Tool. Good. And then the Edain will be more integrated because of how close they were with the elves, and like just generally they're kind of described as being like physically more like elves. What we decided to do was like integrate them quite heavily into the Elven faction. So they use a lot of like obviously Elven things, Scale mail, things with floral designs, a lot of like very delicate curves and stuff like that. Like that weird banded armor thing that the elves have going on. Some of their units will have that. Things like that. So like visually they'll be more integrated with the lords that they serve so faithfully. Whereas Bayor kind of do their own thing a little bit more, and then I'm not sure how the Halden will be, but they'll probably be like very guerrilla-esque. A lot of bonuses in woods and things like that. Hopefully that answers your question. Hopefully you're still here in the chat with us. Let's put down some more stuff. Elven Big House. Let's do that. Let's put an Elven Big House. Right here. Look at this place. Put it off to the side a little bit. It just says, come visit me. Nice open concept living room here. No furniture, no walls. Elves are very minimalist. Let's save that. I think what we'll do is just kind of... I'm going to fill in the details. It's pretty sparse right now. Like, we'll get to that. But I kind of want to, like, fill in the big obvious things. So we'll pop that down there. And that will be, like, what we kind of build everything around. It's, like, an important point. Elven Tower House. I don't think I put down one of these yet. Go ahead and we'll do that. And put it a little bit farther back here. Let's see here. Elven Town Hall. Probably not a bad thing to have. Put that a little bit more centrally so that everyone has access to it. Don't want to get it too close to the stables because it will ruin the walls. That's still touching the ground. Good. Gatehouse. Big house we've done. Tower house we have. Do ourselves a nice little like elven temple here. We got 3 of them. I'll put that one there. It's kind of like central. It's like a nice little like marketplace, and we'll like maybe we'll like put like a market over here, or like we could put it like a guard station here, so it's kind of like near the front gate, and then we can move the market a little bit more centrally over here, and then we can like have people like come through here and like fight for this area. I think that'd be kind of neat. Let's do Temple A over here. We'll do a smaller one. Just kind of beautify the place a little bit. You know how elves do like their beauty. I think that's pretty decent. We've got enough of these. We don't want to like overuse it. I think we've got an Elven Tower. This is Royal Tower. There's another Royal Tower here. Big House. Okay, we've done Big House a bunch of times. Let's do something else. Barracks. Barracks we haven't done. It would make sense to have the barracks kind of like over here. Have a barracks there, and we'll like fill it in with some other stuff. So Elven Tower C, what does this one look like? Oh, I quite like this. Maybe we want to have that like over this way. So Elven Tower, let's save real fast. Elven Tower, let's see. Have that be like kind of like right here. If I get it too close to that, it'll start to alter the terrain, which is something that we probably should have been a little bit more aware of. And there you go. So we've got like the kind of like reference points basically that we're going to like build our town around. A little barracks over there. We can fill this in with some of the regular buildings as well. And I think they integrate pretty nicely with the elven stuff. No, I don't want a settlement. I do want ambient though. So what I think would be kind of cool is we'll have like a military encampment out in here. So let's do fortified house. We'll have like a Oh, that's a Middle Eastern fort. That looks a little bit out of place. So let's pop down. Let's do a medium fortified house. Whoa! I think that'll look decent there. And that's like kind of off to the side, but it like adds character. You can have a little hamlet in the back. Maybe like some little like farm areas. That's pretty nice, I think. Have a watchtower over here too. There you go. So that area is kind of like, that's like fenced off, but what about here? What would make sense for it to be here? See if we can find the marketplace. Let's do that. We'll come back to this area. I definitely want there to be a market over here, though. That's a Middle Eastern market, so we're going to go down, try to find a different one. There we go. And let's see here. A little tavern as well, perhaps? Just a wee little tavern, perhaps on the way in here. A town hall, which I feel like we could integrate quite nicely. Or no, we don't want town hall. We want town guard. That's what I was thinking. Which we can integrate quite nicely alongside. Oh, don't want that. Alongside the Elven barracks that we got right here. And then an inn, we could build a little bit more like this area. Like this would definitely be kind of like a market district or something. Like this would be a good place to go. No, we do have an inn there, I think, so that's alright. Horse Breeders Guild for sure, we want that. Might make sense actually to have this outside the city. Like out here in the plains. And we could drop down Horse Breeders Guild. Have them just a little bit farther back here. And then out in this area, because it's so wide open, that's reasonably wide open. Why don't we consider putting like a little neutral settlement here? What about ambient? If we had a hamlet, I want like a good sized little hamlet here. South European large hamlet. Put it kind of centrally. There's still a way around it right here. And you can actually interact with all this stuff. Like you can go through here. It's not just all blocked off to you. So this is like interactable. And then out here we'll have a watchtower. Like a little dinky one. Let's take a look at chat real fast. In regards to the dwarves, will they have their famous masks? Yes, they will have masks. This I can guarantee you. And whether or not I want to like maybe I want to build it in so that like, actually I think that's a really cool idea. Give them a trait that frightens infantry. Like, that's friggin' awesome. Yes, why not do that? And then the masked units, you look at them and you know that, like, they cause fear, which is important to me because like I want things to be kind of WYSIWYG. Like what you see on a unit is like what you're gonna get from it. So yes, I think that's a really cool idea. I didn't even think about that. That's totally awesome, and I'm gonna steal that from you. I'm as soon as I'm off. Have a good one. Have fun, Anno. Yeah, if you have any troubles, just look me up or look up one of the people on Discord. We're all pretty familiar with a lot of the more common issues that can arise when trying to install the mod. So yeah, don't hesitate to ask for help. We're totally here for you. Fortified house. Yes, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah, so it's a little bit less open, but there's still lots of like areas, lots of like movement and stuff. I think that will do for now. Let's do like a small hamlet. We could maybe pop one. No, that's weird. Why would you have a hamlet in the middle of a major thoroughfare? I did like the South European mill right here. I think that's kind of important. We'll have that a little bit more centrally. Perhaps we could do a mill out here. Might make sense as well. Have a mill just kind of like off to the side. That's a Middle Eastern mill. That'll look a little bit weird. Just having the mills, we can kind of get away with it, but South European Watchtower. I think that'll work. We'll have these mills out here like this, and this will connect to the other mills slightly. There we go. And then I think what we'll do is just to kind of set this apart, just to see how this kind of looks. Maybe we could have this is a bit more square. Yeah, let's do that. And we'll have a field. And what is very obviously a field. And that kind of looks like wheat, I think. We can mix this with other textures too to make it more field-like. So like we're probably not going to finish this map on this stream, but we will get like a really good chunk done. But like we're going to set that apart. And maybe we could put a little bit of like dirt or something on there. Something that blends well with long grass. And there are many things. Put you over here. Oh. Yeah, put you over here. Let's see. Dirt probably works. Not sand so much. There you go. We've kind of like made a field there, and a field that like makes sense. We didn't have to use any of their like field thingamajigs in order to make it happen. And now what we'll do is we're gonna find a fence. There's a few of those. Ruin fence. Yeah, there you go. Some of these have like interesting curves to them. There we go. This probably makes more sense to be right over here. Oh, that's too much. Too much space taken up. Damn it, I keep going to that one, which is just silly. I learned my lesson. There you go. It's kind of like, it's in like disrepair. It's been there for a while. They're maybe building it back up again. I think we should get rid of this one though. Don't much care for it. And we'll put... What do I want to put there? Like an old, like, ruined tower that used to be here. Adds a little bit of character to it, I think. And we got ourselves a little, like, farm there, basically, that we just made. Instead of using the prefab ones, which take up a lot of space. That's very reasonable. Now the inside of here, I don't know what I'm going to do with this yet. It needs to be filled in, but I just don't know what that's going to look like. It's getting a little cluttered, so I don't want to like add too much stuff, you know what I mean? What a camp. I know that there's camps. Small, fortified camp. Encampment small. There we go. Can actually walk through these, so that's fine. I'll put that there. That's kind of okay. Helps us kind of like break it up a little bit, not so much like wide open space. And what if I then put an Elven town hall in here as well? Ambient mist. Elven, Royal Tower, don't care about that. Put one right here. Nice and central. Right in this little plaza. And now, I think it still looks a little bit empty, but I feel like we can kind of fix that. Because like there's a decent amount of like buildings in here now, and we want to obviously leave room for people to play. So let's do... That's short grass. No, I don't like that. I like that more. That's more like people have been treading in here, kind of. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll save it. Turn that down a touch. I'll just be very gentle about it. So we'll make it a bit more intense around there. Then we'll kind of like trail off. We'll just like lightly click. And this area will be a little bit more well worn. We'll make it a bit more intense, like near the building, but like as we get farther out from the building, we'll make it a bit less so. So like out here, it'll. Oop. And then as we get farther out here, that looks all right. And obviously this is a well-worn area, so we want to kind of do that. It's like a major hub of activity, as would be the barracks, so it would make sense. And this, obviously this yard here would be super worn. People just tread it down to the dirt. Take a look at how that looks from the sky. Looks okay. It needs a little, just to be a little bit less perfect. As I mentioned earlier, straight lines can look a little bit unnatural. God does not build in straight lines. Not that I'm religious, but I just like Prometheus. I'll just do that so it's not quite so like straight and orderly. Looks a little bit more natural. And if you're thinking, wow, this looks like a pain in the ass, why bother? You're right, it is a pain in the ass. But we bother because it just doesn't look as good otherwise. Like, it looks artificial, and I find that it pulls me out of the experience a little bit. So I don't want to do that to anybody else. So I will waste endless time on tiny little details that most people don't care or will even notice. That's fine. It's my free time, and I will waste it however I wish. Thank you very much. Yes, battle editor. And I think we'll take a break from this in just a few minutes, and then I can show you what the Vorback Gadgetar look like. And I'll reiterate kind of the philosophy behind them, so you can like understand some of the stuff coming to Toll, and how Tolleen Gauderhoth is going to ultimately look and play, and the things that they'll have access to, etc., etc. So here we go. We'll do that in a moment. Where was I? Right, texture. I believe we had this. We're using this. And you want to turn it down a fair amount. We had it at like 9 or something. That makes sense. Have a little bit of this up here on the hill. Try and fill this in, blur those lines a bit, because people will sometimes take shortcuts from place to place. And then there we'll give it a little bit extra punch. Although, maybe not quite so much as that. That'll do. And then here, we'll make it a very dainty little path, won't we? Oops. And then around here we'll use a different texture. Oop, I don't want the vegetation tool. We want this. We'll use that. And we'll use... let's see, this short grass. I think it looks nice. It's a little bit more like cultivated. It's not quite as like a savage, I guess, as the... maybe we overdid it a bit. I think that looks good. You can sort of see what we're going for here. And we'll like come through here and we'll do that a little bit. And I think that this needs a little bit more oomph. Or does it? Sometimes less is more. Now this area will obviously be very well worn. I'll make that happen. I'll do a bit of dirt in here too. There we go. And eventually I will fill in the entire thing, but I won't subject you to me putting tiny, tiny little marks in the terrain. That's something I'll do on my own time. But, like, you'll see. Like, this'll, when it's done, this is going to be a good map. And there will obviously be, like, a lot of, like, attention that's gone into it. Good, 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 good. And you can walk through there, too, which is nice. So let's talk about the Vorback Gadgetar, the blind hunters of Tolin Gaurhoth. Oops. You guys want to see some new units? I bet you do. The magic touch of roads. I know, I know. Awesome to hear about the Dwarves and Gondolin, as they are some of my favorite parts of the Silmarillion, and I have a quick question about the campaign. Large amounts of scripts or very little? I think the intention is to do as little scripting as possible. One, because scripting is a lot of work, and two, because it slows down your game when you have too many. And nobody likes 5-minute turn times. We learned that lesson with Moss many moons ago. And I don't think anybody wants to repeat that. So, scripting will be a minimum, but obviously we will need some scripting. It will have to happen. Otherwise, you won't have cool special events. It will just be a sandbox, and that won't be as much fun, I think. We'll play against the Syriand. You can kind of see how quickly these guys can move. But yes, so scripts, yes. Tons and tons and tons of scripts to the detriment of gameplay. No. Alright. And then we'll cover the other legendary companies as well. So, just to reiterate, what's a legendary company? Well, I am not at all ashamed to say that it is an idea that I stole from Creative Assembly and their Warhammer games. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Warhammer and with the Regiments of Renown. Many of them do different special things, but they're like modified versions of an already existing unit. That is exactly the philosophy that we are taking when it comes to our, as we are calling them, legendary companies, but they are essentially ROR, just a different term, because we didn't want to be super blatant about it. But the idea behind them is not to provide you with a bodyguard unit that's like a lower tier bodyguard unit, or not to give you a unit that is a must-have, that is a absolute best choice in every single situation, because that's just poor design. The legendary companies, despite the fact that they have legendary in their name, and you're thinking, oh, they'll just destroy everything, is not the case. They have counters, they have weaknesses when compared to the regular units, but they add enough unique functionalities or fill gaps or help you in certain situations such that they are a useful unit to want to bring some of the time. And every time, they're going to have a different model. So these are essentially a unique version of the Laugskaraz Zagul Collab, which are effectively they are like a mid-tier Lancer / melee cavalry hybrid for Tolin Gaurhoth. They're very cheap, but they're not very survivable. And people will see them coming because they have these big unit sizes, they're big ugly wargs, and nobody wants to get hit by that. The Vorback Gadgetar act a little bit differently. They are not armor piercing like the other unit is. They have really strong bonuses in terrain, whereas Laugskaraz units will have an extra 1 damage in the forest. These guys have 4. In addition to, the Laugskaraz, I think they have like 5, 5, 3 in that order of bonus against cavalry, other wargs, and then elephants. Or it's 5, 5, 5 maybe. But this unit trades bonus against elephants and bonus against other wargs for increased bonus against horsemen. So they have 8, I think it's 2, 2 in that order in terms of bonus against horses, other wargs, and elephants. They are also smaller, with 60 men in the unit, as you can see here. The extra 4 comes from the officer and the general that we have in the unit. And they are super fast. They are unbelievably fast, and I'll show you just how fast they are. So Tolin Gaurhoth can often struggle against the Syrians. Horse archers, because they are super fast. They hit really hard. And Tolin Gaurhoth doesn't really have really high shield or armor values. But look at the speed on these guys. They are little road runners, and they also are equipped with shields, so they're not going to be easy to just pew to death. Although the AI doesn't really like getting shot like this, and it will constantly reform to, like... I may have to change their formation spacing a little bit. But they stand up to that quite well, as you can see. They lose a few. But now that they're on top of these horse archers, they are 0.2 speed faster than them. And that means a lot when you're talking about cavalry. These guys will generally die off, although for some reason they are dying like dogs right now. But we'll go ahead and wait for that to stabilize a little bit. I think it's just because of the countercharging. And now you'll see the sentries of Gelion start to fall away. So the Vorback Gadgetar, less armor. They have a shield. They can hide anywhere. They are incredibly fast. And a unit like this is going to be really important for catching up to like sentries of Gelion, for example. So even if, so we'll look at the price between these two. These guys are 800. These guys are 820. Even if you lose this unit fighting a sentry of Gelion, or you lose half the unit, you've still killed a unit that costs about the same as yours. You've wiped them out. This is a big threat. And now you don't have to face that anymore. You've got the rest of your army to help you kind of deal with and run down those sneaky Assyrian dogs. And most of their units are spear units. So, like, taking out a missile unit like this can potentially be game-changing. Especially when people don't see it coming. Like, obviously, we lined up across the field and we ran straight at them. These guys can hide anywhere. They can hide in forests. They are very, very quick. So you can punish people's micro mistakes or for not paying attention very, very easily with a unit like the Vorback Gadgetar in ways that you probably wouldn't be able to do with a regular Laugskaraz. So they have their ups and their downs. They also have really good melee defense. They got 12 melee defense. They are not slouches in melee. Their damage is lower, and they're not armor piercing, but they have all those contextual bonuses. So it's a unit it's situational, but it can potentially be very, very good. Yeah, so we lost a lot of units there once we like got into like close combat, but like once things started to stabilize, then you just massacred this unit, and it's still in decent health, and it's super fast, and it's got crazy high charge value as well. It's got what, 13 charge? So if you can get this behind somebody, it's gonna hurt, even though it's not armor piercing. That's like 19 damage going their way. There's no armor value in the game that is high enough to stand up to that well, and they never break in addition. So it's situational, but they can be very, very good like hit and run attackers, even if you're not like in an Assyrian matchup. Like if you want to use this to like outmaneuver your opponents or to help set up ambushes with your Throngsheik Wolfborn, for example, the 2 HP wargs, the Vorback can be really, really useful for that. And because they can hide, you can get the jump on people. And they won't even know that you've got them until you show them, which can potentially be important. And sometimes, you know, maybe it's not. Maybe you end up like getting caught, and people find your Vorback, and you're like, well, shit. There goes the element of surprise, and then they get focused down. So it's not necessarily a must-have unit, but it is a good unit, I think, in certain situations. Oh yeah, and they cause fear, so they can be decent for causing mass routes, which is kind of. I don't want to push Tolin Gauderhoth towards like easily having mass route capability, but I would like to give the Ash Priest Sphere. The Throngsheik only scare horsemen, so these two units would cause fear, and then I'm thinking about giving some fire arrows to the Hishbukraz hunters, because that works with their like faction lore that I created for them, the Hishbukraz being this like tribe who are obsessed with fire and like anoint themselves with the ashes of the fallen and stuff like that. That would work for them. Because the Hishbukraz hunters don't do a lot of damage, but they can potentially work with a morale debuff in tandem with other units on the roster, and give Tolin Gauderhoth a little bit of like unique flavor at the same time. So that is the Vorback Gadgetar. Let's talk a little bit about the other units in case you guys haven't seen them yet. There are two others that we're going to look at. First one is the Accursed of Alcolonde, and that's for the Sons of Feanor. And we'll get them in game, and then I'll talk a little bit about them. Oops, that's the wrong faction. We need the Philotherim. And the Philotherim have the Mariners of Erendil. And I'll talk briefly about them first, because there is some stuff I can say here at this screen. So, one of our testers pointed out to me, his name is Alexander, that the Rankir Lim offered a lot of similar things to the Mariners of Erendil. So I've changed that a little bit. The Mariners of Erendil are essentially they're to give the Philothrim another like mid-tier damaging unit, because they only have the Warriors of Eglarest. The Marines, they're like upper mid-tier, the Warriors of Eglarest, but the Marines of Berthomba are like a lower mid-tier unit. They don't have great damage, 7. They're not armor-piercing. Their missile isn't armor-piercing. It's just irritating, potentially fatal if you're light or medium infantry without a lot of shield value, or if you're shock infantry. So they have their uses. But in melee, they don't do a ton of damage. 7, you can upgrade them to 9. It's not huge. The Warriors of Eglarest have a lot of extra damage. They've got like, not quite, like 40% extra damage, something like that. And the Mariners of Eärendil have more damage still. And they also can do damage to large units like elephants, so the Philothrim don't have any shock infantry. And all shock infantry in Silmarillion Total War have the Monster Hunter trait, which gives them +2 against elephant units. As the Philothrim lack shock infantry, they lack that bonus on all of their non-spear units. So the Mariners of Eärendil can be useful that way, with the high damage there. They also have a really strong morale buffing ability. So +2 morale in a 100-meter radius, which I think will push them towards being a suitable unit to use in field battles over the Arankirlim, who give +4, but only in a 30-meter radius. So in a field battle, you're going to be a lot more stretched out. You're going to have lots of units fighting different actions. The Mariners of Eärendil are able to easily buff almost an entire army just by having them placed centrally or having them like kind of more or less near the center of your line and like helping and supporting whatever actions that you're doing. So you're still able to use them as the mid-tier unit they're intended to be, but they will buff all nearby units. The mid-tier units will go to 18, upper mid-tiers will go to 19, and the high tiers will also go to 19. These guys here will go to 19. So I think for a field battle, that's a little bit more important, having that like greater coverage, whereas the Arankirlim are useful for more localized engagements when you need that kind of support. So in a siege, for example, the Arankirlim I think will be a must-have unit. Whereas in a field battle, you can get away with going more mid-tier. And I think that the Mariners fit really nicely into a heavy mid-tier build. So I think that the Arankirlim are still really good, and there's obviously some similarities. They're units of like similar weapon types. Mariners of Eärendil are faster, and some other stuff like that. But and they have bonuses and like terrain and stuff that the Arankirlim don't get. But I think that there is a choice to be made there about whether or not you want to bring out Arankirlim or whether or not you want to bring the Mariners of Eärendil. And it helps as well. The Mariners of Eärendil are nearly 200 florins cheaper. There's a big difference there. In terms of their price, which can be important. Like that much money can determine whether or not you are able to bring an attachment or whether or not you're able to bring a whole other unit. That's like nearly 200 here. That's a significant portion of the price of a Noble of Balar unit, and that's like a quarter of the price of a Marine of Eglarest. So it can make a difference. But let's go ahead and we'll see them in game, and I'll talk about the other unit as well. You probably want to see the models and such. Yeah, the 2-hour mark. Hey, we did it. Always wishing I could find the roads so that you can have your units moving faster, like in Napoleon Total War 3. It would be nice. And there are actually movement speeds tied to different terrain that you can use on the battle editor. So you can kind of do that. You can actually create roads where units will have a passive movement speed, not necessarily buff, but they won't have a debuff, whereas a lot of other terrain types will have debuff. So you can sort of have that in Medieval 2. It is a thing. But let's finish talking about the Mariners of Eärendil. One other thing to note is that over the regular things like Warriors of Eglarest units, they have a little bit less men, so they got 104 here, and they're obviously more expensive than those units. So they kind of skirt the line between those 3 sword units in the Philothrim faction, but they do offer a lot of unique capabilities that both units don't. The other 2 units that could compete with them don't have. So I think that there are good reasons to include the Mariners of Eärendil in your build, not necessarily in every single build. Sometimes the Arankirlim are just going to be better value for what you need to do. But yeah, so that's them. Actually, it's a good thing the Rogue Assassin here, because I know that he was concerned about, because I know Moss tried something similar to this, and they ended up just making better bodyguard units. That's obviously what I want to try to avoid. So this discussion will probably be particularly pertinent to your interests because, well, because of that exact reason. So here, we have the Accursed of Alcolonde. Probably the coolest model I think that I've ever worked on. And I really super duper like them. They are a unique unit of Defenders of Aglon. And ignore the fact that there are bearded homeless men there. We're still working on things. Obviously, the mod is in alpha, so we're going to update pictures and stuff like that later. But a few things to note about them is that they have combat bonuses in deserts. That's just cheeky because the Philanthrope also get combat bonuses in deserts, and these are Kinslayers. So they're like natural hunters of Philanthrope units. They also scare nearby enemy units. I don't think that the Sons of Feanor actually have a fear-causing unit, except perhaps the Roqueni Magloro. That may only be to cavalry. They have improved morale over the Defenders of Aglon. They've got a little bit more charge and a little bit more damage. So other things that they do is that they cannot be stunned in combat, so they have Relentless for the people who are more familiar with DAC than they are with other mods. They have the Relentless trait, which means that they cannot be stun locked. So they are always attacking. Always. Their armor is enhanced over the base, although the Defenders of Aglon can upgrade to 13 with an armor upgrade, which is fairly cheap to do when you're the Sons of Feanor. And these guys also have a minor missile deflection. You notice that they don't have a shield, but they have a shield value. The idea is they can deflect things with their weapons, which I think is a little bit of unique flavor. A little bit of a Swordmaster of Hoeth vibe kind of going on there. But the big thing that these guys are weak to is basically being out cost effective. They're super expensive. I think they're the most expensive non-2 HP foot unit in the game. Their melee defense is 2 lower, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it does make a difference. So, for example, a unit of Doriath Axemen can beat these guys, despite the fact that they are nearly 300 florins cheaper. The Doriath Bodyguard, the Fists of Mablung, absolutely dumpster the Accursed of Alcolonde. Armor-piercing units can be super efficient against them. And things that have attack values of 10 or slightly lower, so like 9 and above, can really do a lot of damage to these guys. I noticed quite a lot that despite their large armor values, they do drop fairly quickly in melee, and that comes down to their lower melee defense values. Also, 10 melee defense and having that huge reliance on armor makes them super vulnerable to cavalry charges. Other units can be, but these guys in particular are very vulnerable to it because 10 is okay, but compared to a lot of other Elven units out there, it's real mediocre, especially for units that cost as much as they do, and who have the unit size that they do. So there are drawbacks to using them, and it's very easy for less expensive units to completely murderize these guys. Well, I don't say it's very easy. It is very easy for certain units, specifically those that tie high armor piercing and high damage together in one unit, to get a lot of value out of fighting the Accursed of Alcolonde. That being said, sword units, single weapon units like axemen and like regular line infantry will get trucked by these guys. They open up like really strong melee focused builds for the Sons of Feanor, which is something that they kind of needed because there's a lot of new polearms and stuff being added to the game, a lot of really powerful units, new factions, etc., etc., and they were kind of falling behind in the infantry fight. So this does kind of give them the ability to be a bit more aggressive in an infantry fight and rely less on their cavalry. They still rely on their cavalry, but they rely on them to a lesser extent if you're investing enough to bring the Accursed of Alcolonde, especially if you're going to bring them with a couple of Defenders of Aglon, and you want like a super like high tier, really damaging second line. This unit's fit perfectly into that kind of thing. But obviously you give up cavalry, you give up other things. So their weaknesses are, as well, they don't actually have the Monster Hunter trait. So they're not as good at fighting against elephants, for example, as other two-handed units will be. So there are like downsides to bringing them. There's ups and there's downs. I personally have used this unit all of once, and I was super impressed with how it played. I faced off against a unit, a composition from Doriath that was really, really strong for this particular unit. Like, this unit's really good in that matchup because they had so many mid-tiers, and a lot of those mid-tiers don't have a lot of melee defense. They don't have a lot of like defensive stats. They're like good offensively and in supporting roles. But units like these guys, they are like chaff mulchers. They will destroy things. So they can be particularly useful in games against Tolin Gauderhoth, for example, who fields a ton of chaff and doesn't have polearms. They can be useful, I find, on the flanks when you're facing an Angband army, because most Angband players tend to fairly predictably put their polearms in the center of their line. So you can use these guys to roll up lines, to like crush your way through heavily armored chaff from Angband, because again, they have super high damage. They got 17 damage. There's nothing that has 17 armor in the game. They can be very efficient against not armor-piercing bodyguard units, like lower number but like more expensive and very elite units. They can be really good against. But of course, then they have their pitfalls. So cavalry can be scary against them. Anything with armor-piercing, etc., etc. They can kind of stall out there in the face of that. So there's a lot of things that they do really well, and they open up a lot of possibilities for the Sons of Feanor. But I think that they're well designed enough that they're not an automatic include. Personally, I would automatically include them because I find the model gorgeous. But that's not a gameplay thing. That's just me being silly and prioritizing aesthetics over things that actually matter in a competitive multiplayer game. They are very shiny looking. I'm quite happy with that. There'll be lore green books like in DAC. It's hard to say, Antipius, because my focus is obviously on multiplayer. And we do have a separate team that works on campaign. Obviously, we collaborate. But right now, they're just trying to get our campaign map online, and then we can start worrying about things like scripting. But yeah, let's have these units fight against each other. And, like, I would give this fight to the Accursed of Alcolonde 9 times out of 10. But let's find out what happens. Yeah, right away they take the lead. Oh, yeah, they're gonna lose one there. And then the AI tries to pull out because they're stupid, and I don't know why they do this. So like these guys will like beast mode their way straight through a unit of Mariners of Erendil. But again, they're not designed to be like a super offensive like superiority unit against like regular infantry the way that these guys are. So like I would expect this to be the case. Also, javelins can be super scary against these guys because of how heavily they rely on their armor. Oh yeah, look at that. That hurts. But you can see them like steadily drop. Like in a straight fight like this, you are going to lose units. And if these guys stood and fight, they'd probably kill like 15 or 20 of us. And always, you're going to be fighting against armies, not just individual units. So like, people are going to be trying to focus fire these guys. Poor Mariners of Erendil. Oh man, they just get brutalized. Dead Teleri everywhere. That's what these guys do best. But like even then, we went down to 77. Like you lose units in every single one of these because of that lower melee defense value. So they're not like overpowered. I don't think they're overpowered. I think that they are in a really good position. Let's see where we're at. It's about 8 o'clock my time. That's enough time on the computer, I think. So, with that being said, I'll probably stop the stream here. I'm going to open up the floor to anybody who has any additional questions. And I'll go up through the chat here and try and find some things that I haven't already answered. Think you should use a smudge or whatever it's called tool in the mountains to make them more aesthetic. Yeah, I could do that. I never really use a smudge tool. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions about the mod or any questions about the channel, or you have like requests for things that you want to see in the future, I'm still here. So now's probably a pretty good time to voice concerns, questions, etc., etc. That's pretty well all I have to say on like where we're at with Silmarillion Total War so far. Obviously, we've added a couple new factions. They're pretty damn cool. Easterling's here. Obviously, this is a placeholder. We had our guy who normally designs these things is busy. And the other one is the Philothrum. The Easterlings are pretty damn cool. Split between the faithful Easterlings of Boar and the traitorous ones of Ulfang. This is Boar's bodyguard here, and then you have, of course, the Sons of Ulfang. Black armored ones, following a very similar theme of being more lightly armored and darker in coloration. And then the golden ones, a little bit closer to what we would expect from the Third Age Easterlings. They're represented here, and the reason that we did that is one, because I think it looks cool, and rule of cool is important to me, and two, because I like the headcanon of when Ulfang and his descendants slaughtered Boar and the fighting men of that tribe and then integrated their people into their own. I like to think that they kind of stole the identity, like crimped the style of these people before them, and like stole their legitimacy and their majesty, which just seems like something that they would do. And behind all of that, it's obviously a very thin veneer, that like golden, beautiful exterior, and then inside you have the corrupted, the corrupted Easterlings are like eaten out with like hate and distrust and like fell for the lies of Morgoth. So that's kind of my personal headcanon, and sort of like the story behind like why they look the way that they look. Yes, these are all the Easterling units. And I suppose we could show them off briefly. Why not? I'll talk about them each in turn. The Philothrum I think we've done to death a few times. We'll just include some of the cool units that I really like in here. Yeah, that'll do. Oh, but yeah, we'll talk about the Easterlings a little bit, and then I think I'm gonna go outside, go for a run, be active before it gets too dark and I get too tired. So we'll line up the golden units first. Now you'll probably notice that there are like less. It's about the same. It's about the same, but you'll be able to bring like more of these like evil Easterling units. They'll be of a higher unit caps. Let's just go down the line here. So here we have the mid-tier unit, Warband of Lothland. I know that their mask looks a little bit weird with all the glowy white shit around it. Their alpha, it's like the alpha channels basically on the texture is weird. On the normal texture is not looking right. So that will have to be fixed. Here we have the Salamandrine Guard. Taurion, I believe, did the helmets for these guys, and they look fantastic. Oh, pardon me, they look fantastic. I put the rest of the model together from some various bits and bobs. And they have most of the Boar Easterling units will have like the banners of the Sons of Feanor being flown off their backs. And these guys are like a horse archer, melee cavalry hybrid. They also have really high bonuses against monsters. They're super expensive, though. They're a really good unit, but they're very expensive. And they also have a unique projectile, which I'll show off to you in a minute. Here, this one's basically just an Easterling unit. It's like the Campbell's Chosen, right? They're the Chieftain's Honor Guard, the most heavily armored unit that Boar's tribe can field. You can see a stat breakdown for them there. Very expensive, but very good. Here we have the Wardens of Lothland. Spear unit. They also have a nice morale buff for units nearby. And they're high tier. Really, really good melee defense. A lot of the Boar units specialize in more defensive weapons, such as the Clan Guard. They are the only scimitar-wielding unit in the game. And scimitars trade base damage for a bunch of extra melee defense. They basically trade base damage for melee defense at a 2-to-1 ratio. So they have really high melee defense as well. And they're a little bit more offensive than the pike, or not the pike, the spear units, because they have a different damage type that lends itself better to fighting other units. And we have the halberdiers. I think they are the most damaging halberdier in the game, and that's mostly a function of their lower unit size. But they're really, really good. Obviously, they're in spear wall, so they get multiple attacks. Multiple 12 attacks is super strong with the AP. They have the slashing damage type, so they're going to be good against like spears, and better against infantry than they would otherwise be. We also have a detachment of them here, so you can bring 3 units of the halberdiers and 2 detachments. So essentially, a detachment is a half strength unit that you pay half price for. So in effect, if you want to, You can bring 4 halberdiers, which I feel is reasonable because of how tiny these units are. Very, very vulnerable to shock damage. Can take a lot of the wind out of the sails of these units when they take damage really, really quickly, and that's kind of the big downside to the boar units. Next, we have Ulfang's Tribe. Here we have the Pillagers of Himring. This model was done by Sky Lee, and it is fantastic. So, big props to him. And they all use Falxes. So the Easterlings, a lot of their specialization comes from their unique unit types. So, halberds, not many people have halberds. I think there's one other faction that has them, and that being Angband. The Kopesh that these guys have gives them armor piercing, because why not? It also makes them more expensive. And here we have the Falx. The Falx doesn't have any particular bonuses to melee defense or attack or anything like that, like extra damage and whatever. But what they do get is massive charge value. So take a look here. Charge value on that unit is hideous. And they also cause fear as well. So potentially a very good unit for causing routes, smashing apart things, even with their lack of armor piercing. That's like 39 damage or something like that going somebody's way. That's going to hurt. And all Falx units, because the Ulfang Easterlings lack spear units, all their Falx units are faster, and they get bonuses against all types of cavalry, including the regular Monster Hunter bonuses that all two-handed units get. So they have +2 against all cavalry, potentially very, very scary. Especially if you pop these guys in loose formation, you countercharge a charging cavalry unit. That's a lot of damage coming their way, and you will get great value off that charge, even if you lose a significant number from the unit. And so for that reason, I recommend using the Pillagers of Himring a bit differently. They are more expensive and less numerous. Next, we have the Marauders of Himring. They are an axe unit. They use axes in close combat. And they also throw throwing axes. So the difference between throwing axes and javelins is the lack of AP. Although some javelins do lack AP, depending on if they're a dedicated skirmisher or not. But these guys won't have AP, and they'll be a little bit smaller range. So I think they lose like 20 range or something. And they go from like 80 to 60 or something like that. And they also have increased base damage. So most mid-tier javelins, like this mid-tier unit here, cap out at 6 damage. These guys have 9, which is great. They're also quite fast. They've got okay armor, and they are shielded, which a lot of Ulfang units aren't. So that's nice for them. Then we have the Ravagers of Himring. These guys are very, very cool. So in addition to the standard Easterling bonuses of getting, at least the Ulfang units, of getting bonuses in Desert, they have the bonus fighting against cavalry. They've got really good charge bonus for what they are and what they cost. And they're also locked morale. And kind of the intention behind this unit is to be an irritating tar pit. You can bring up to 4 of them, I think, in total. And you can use them in tandem with some axe thrower units. So they actually pair quite nicely with the Marauders of Himring. Tie someone down with the Ravagers of Himring, toss some javelins into them, get some extra value. And meanwhile, these guys will not break under any circumstances. You can accomplish that same feat with the Eastron Marauders, and you can do it for cheaper. These guys have more ammunition than the Marauders of Himring. Is that what they are? Yes, the Marauders of Himring. And that's kind of their big thing. They're also significantly cheaper. I think they're like 200 florins cheaper. Yeah, exactly 200. And they've got pretty good numbers as well. So altogether, it's a nice cheap unit. You can use them to get some easy damage off on people. Yeah, very, very aggressive as it is a throwing axe unit, so the range isn't very high. Eastron Horsemen. One thing that I forgot to mention about the other Horse Archer unit is that because the Easterlings do not have foot archers, they have horse archers. Now, their horse archers don't take the regular range penalties. They can fire at the same range as regular bowmen, while being more maneuverable and having more ammunition. The downside, they're generally more expensive, and there's less of them. Although that does not really apply to these guys, as they are so weak and pathetic outside of range that they're actually fairly cheap. You can bring a unit for 485, and you get 70 men for your trouble. They also have really high missile attack for what they are, just to kind of balance the risk-reward, I guess, for using them, as they are very lightly armored and unshielded. They will die to almost anything. But in return, they can deal some pretty stinging damage from range. And and toss that down the field and be very, very scary for that reason. And you can bring up to 3 of them. Now over here, Sons of Ulfang. You guys want to see a charge bonus? These guys have what? 28 non-armor piercing? Yeah. This is the big boy charge bonus. They've got 34, 15 base damage, armor piercing. They are 1 HP. They can deploy stakes, so they can be pretty irritating that way. We've got fantastic morale. They've got the regular bonus fighting cavalry. So if these guys countercharge, say, a unit of Knights of Feanor, the Roqueni Magloro, that's going to hurt. That unit might not walk away, especially if these guys are like loose formation and they find themselves like caught on all sides. They might wipe out half a unit. So, yes, they're kind of vulnerable. They don't have amazing armor, but they do have by far the best armor of any unit on the Ulfang roster. Tapping out at 9, which is okay. Most units, I think, tend to have between like 2 to 6 for Ulfang, which is not great, and most of them are unshielded. These guys have good armor. Their defense skill is all right, better than a lot of units, but lower than a lot of bodyguard units. But that damage, though, that's really where this unit can shine. And the bonus versus cavalry and the bonus in the deserts, like potentially this becomes a very scary unit when used against the right targets. Obviously, they're vulnerable to missiles, javelins, things like that. But yeah, that's their bodyguard unit. And that's pretty well it for the Easterlings. Interested to see if you get the Falxman to work right. Yes, one thing to note about the Falxman, I think I mentioned this, but I'll just reiterate it now because why not, is that their charge bonus is off the chain. They get like a 225% charge bonus, which is not quite double, but nearly double the 125% of a regular two-handed non-axe unit. These guys are murderous on the charge. But yeah, that's pretty well the Easterlings. And I think that talks about them in enough length and kind of detail. So I think that's going to do for me for tonight. It's been like 2 hours of streaming. I know some people asked for a stream, and well, you got one. I know it wasn't exactly battles or anything, but we will be doing that on Saturday, I am happy to tell you. We'll be running some games with my clanmates, the Dark Tower clan. And we're going to be playing 2v2s, 3v3s. We'll be playing on the Silmarillion test build, so you'll get to see everything in action. And I will have another minor patch between now and then to add some new things. Then we'll be able to show off those changes. So that's pretty exciting. I would also, before I sign off here, I would like to give a big shout out to all the team and the volunteers that work with me on this project. It wouldn't be where it is. And I know a lot of people say that, but this project wouldn't exist if I didn't have all the people who helped me out from other mod teams, all the people who volunteer their time, and all the people who are on the dev team that work really hard. Stewart of Dale, for example, is one of our mod helpers, and I'm going to sneeze. 1 second. Okay, that's out of the way. Stewart of Dale, one of our mod helpers. All the unit cards that you see here are done by Stewart of Dale, with the exception of the Ulfang units, which were done by Skyly. But most of the unit cards in the mod get done by Stewart of Dale. And we wouldn't have that critical piece, critical detail without him. Sin in the Dark Cloud, Skyly, Taurion, Secretariat, everybody has helped work on this project for 9 months. And we're at a point where we've got 9 of 11 factions basically finished. 8 of them are on the build. Gondolin has a lot of work on them, been done on them, and the Dwarves are the only one that really need a lot of sit down time in order to get them into a place where they're ready to be released. But without all those people, this project wouldn't be where it is today. So my hat's off to all of them. And of course, the people who support us in the audience and who, watch the replays, who are interested, who show up on stream and they ask questions and they just make me feel like the amount of time that we spend doing this is actually worth it. So thank you very much, everybody. So yeah, I'm going to take off. I'm going to go outside. You're definitely going to get mortars with the Dwarves. I'm going to look for some ways to make their artillery game cool. And their missile play, which I don't think a lot of people think about when they play with the Dwarves, is oh yeah, it's just going to be infantry. I'm just going to be walking at stuff and running it over. But the Dwarves will, I hope, have lots of missile play and lots of decisions to make in that regard. Lots of micro and things like that. And then, of course, they'll have to deal with the ever perennial issue of Dwarves of being too damn slow to stop people from outmaneuvering you. And so finding ways to defend yourself and having to plan ahead and having layered defenses, all things that I think are very, very congruent when you think of the Nalgrim. Yeah, you'll be able to do all of that, and hopefully it brings a fresh take to what I think is a very played out faction in terms of like the amount of variety that you see across mods. A lot of dwarves tend to play the same way. So I would like to, I guess, sign off there. So hopefully that's something that's cool. Hopefully the dwarves work out. Hopefully you're enjoying the mod in Silmarillion, and I hope you join us on Saturday. It should be a lot of fun, unless, barring crashes. But right now, we've managed to, again, with the help of our volunteers, crush almost all the crashes. Occasionally people get crashes because their computers can't handle all the million units on screen. But we don't get like model crashes, and we don't get like EDU crashes and stuff like that. It just doesn't really happen anymore. And that came down to, I think it was actually Alex who helped out Secretariat hugely in getting things like into a space where they're very, very stable, and we could finally progress forward and get cool games and show them off to you. But I'm just going in circles at this point. So my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I hope you've enjoyed our stream so far. I hope you're enjoying the mod.